Greetings. This is the one you've known as Jesus the Christ. Spiritual bypassing or emotional bypassing, which may be a better word for it, refers to this tendency to gloss over, avoid, or repress one's emotions. This term refers to spiritual seekers using meditation or spiritual concepts like "it is all good" to circumvent or plaster over necessary emotional work. Yes, it is all good, even the negative feelings that need your attention and love. Emotional bypassing isn't something only spiritual seekers do, but nearly everyone. People naturally avoid examining their emotions and the thoughts that led to them. The ego is what avoids this, even though it created the feelings in the first place. The ego is invested in perpetuating these thoughts and emotions because the false self and its identities are maintained by them. One of the ways the ego does this is by creating a sense that emotional work is really hard and even dangerous. People are often afraid of their feelings, and this fear helps keep feelings in place. But this fear is a mirage. The fear seems true and real, but it isn't. Fear is a smokescreen to keep you from looking at your feelings. For the most part, emotional work feels hard because the ego is so resistant to it, not because the work is actually difficult. Emotional work only requires a willingness to look and be curious and see how you were mistaken in the conclusions you came to in the past, particularly in childhood. It takes a willingness to see things from a higher, more inclusive perspective, from your soul's perspective, and it requires setting aside some time to do this, taking some quiet time to go within and look and ask some questions. How hard is it really to look and ask some questions? Feelings are not scary or dangerous things, and they aren't even things. They're more like nothing than a thing. Feelings don't even have to be unpleasant. They're just sensations in the body. When you relate to them as that, they aren't a problem. All they want is to be acknowledged, accepted, and experienced. Then they'll subside naturally and be healed. Feelings only stay and grow in strength and become unpleasant when they're dealt with improperly, which is what usually happens. When you have feelings such as anger, your default, the ego's way, is to dwell on the thoughts that created those feelings, which only adds more fuel to the fire. Once those feelings have been pumped up, they're difficult to be objective about or hold back. They become compelling and beg to be expressed some way, often detrimentally. Expressing them when in such a state is never the solution to those feelings, although many believe it is. The solution is to sit with the feeling and experience it in the body. Notice it, allow it, and experience the sensations in the body that accompany it, without thinking about it or telling more stories about it. Most of those thoughts come from the ego and won't be helpful. Just let the feeling be there, without doing anything about it, expressing it, thinking about it, or pushing it away. If you can gain some insight into the feeling intuitively, that's great. The insight you're looking for come from asking, "What did I just tell myself that made me feel this way?" Or, "What did I conclude in the past that's making me feel this way now?" By doing this, you're taking responsibility for creating that feeling by believing certain thoughts. You created that feeling yourself, or your ego did, and you can uncreate it. Emotional work that people most try to avoid relates to how they came to feel a certain way about themselves. What conclusions did you come to as a child about yourself that were faulty and continue to cause problems for you? Your deepest conditioning and greatest wounds involve negative feelings that arise again and again around your identity, what you believe about yourself. These identities established in childhood continue to define and limit you as an adult until you examine them and free yourself from them. Doing this work will set you free, and the reward is great. You start by examining the negative thoughts and feelings you repeatedly get caught in. Then track those thoughts and feelings back to the thoughts and feelings that underpin them. There are always many related thoughts and feelings behind the more obvious thoughts and feelings. Find out what you concluded as a child about yourself as a result of some experience or experiences, or as a result of what others said about you. Discover how you believed things that weren't true about yourself simply because you were too young to know any better and your parents weren't able to help you see yourself differently. Some of this work you can do by yourself, and some you will need a therapist or other healer for, especially if abuse or trauma was involved. Please do this for yourself. Only you can free yourself to be your best self. This work is essential for your soul's growth so that you can progress smoothly and steadily on the spiritual path. Seekers often despair about getting it or landing in presence and then losing it, getting stuck in the ego again. They have a short or longer glimpse of presence and then fall back into the egoic state of consciousness. This back and forth is normal and part of the process of spiritual awakening. Getting it and losing it is a sign that more emotional work or inquiry is needed before you can be more stabilized in presence and awakening can happen. Unhealed thoughts hold people back. They pull you back into your ego and false identities because you feel compelled to think them. They're difficult to detach from because they seem important or necessary for your safety. Thoughts that arise again and again need to be examined and seen as false again and again. You'll have to be convinced that these thoughts are false before you'll be able to stay in the here and now for long. Otherwise, being present feels dangerous. The same is true of negative feelings. If certain feelings are very old or have been building for a while, you may have to sit repeatedly with them and inquire into what they're about and see that the thoughts behind them are false before you're able to become more stabilized in the here and now. With some healing, the voice in your head becomes quieter, less compelling, and less negative, and so do your feelings. Then it's possible to just notice the voice in your head and turn your attention away from it. This is the basic instruction I teach. Notice your thoughts, turn your attention away from them, and put your attention on something in the here and now. If you can do this, you'll have few negative feelings, and the ones you have will have space around them and be more easily set aside. However, dealing with recurrent or strong feelings by turning away or meditating could be a form of bypass, so this is tricky. You have to be willing to investigate your feelings when needed, and yet sometimes simply ignoring a feeling is the way to let it go instead of letting it grow. Knowing how to handle your feelings, whether they need more of your attention or less, takes practice, but this work must be done. Emotional work is an important part of the spiritual path. Thank you for your openness. Thank you for being here. I am with you always.